Ace Combat 1 wasn't a bad game, it just felt so bare bones. Ace Combat 2, however, is a step up in practically every way. More story, more graphics, more explosions. Ace Combat 2 was released in 1997, 2 years after the first game. The developer, Namco, had the opportunity to improve upon the foundation, and boy did they. The story is all new, but it begins exploring the world of Strangereal. Strangereal is the Earth-like planet in which most the Ace Combat games take place. The airplanes and weapons are, for the most part, the same as ours. The countries and some of the technology, however, is not. It's a great excuse to make the player experience some ridiculous situations. You're again placed in the boots of Phoenix, a nameless pilot and leader of the Scarface Squadron. It's the same guy from the first Ace Combat, but to even call him a character is a bit of a stretch. This trend will change in later games, but for now, this is all background lore stuff. Speaking of, the fanbase of this series loves the lore, and there is a ton of it. I will get things wrong and leave some things out, intentionally and otherwise, so please just keep that in mind going forward. Like I said, this is the first time the series really starts stretching its legs in terms of lore, but just barely. The general plot is that the country of Usia experiences a coup attempt as the heads of state are away on a diplomatic mission. Some fans of the series claim this was a meeting about a future asteroid strike, though I don't think this is actually referenced anywhere in Ace Combat 2. You gotta remember that this game was of course written at the time, before they even knew there would be an Ace Combat 3, let alone a whole bunch more games in the franchise. Things have since been retconned, and nations, people, and events in these early games, well, it's better to think of them as ambiguous rumors rather than hard facts. Regardless, I love when games have lots of secret background lore that may or may not be present in the game itself. So this coup attempt was enacted by some high-ranking members of the Usian military. The Loyalists call on your squadron for help, since you're somewhat of a rock star after the first game. These coup members now also have access to Usian superweapons, such as a massive submarine and a bomber prototype. It's a taste of the crazy WMDs that'll begin showing up in future games. To supplement what I learned in the game, I read the fandom wiki page for this game too, and to be honest, I'm pretty sure like half of this stuff isn't even present in the game. There's no references given, so I can't verify anything I didn't see for myself. So I'll mostly just talk about what I saw during the game's story beats, which are given in the briefings before every mission. For example, the fandom page claims the submarine and some of the ace pilots you take out were controlled by Zoe, a hyper-advanced artificial intelligence. I couldn't find any examples of this being referenced in-game, but I also don't think anyone just made things up whole cloth for the wiki page. That's the interesting, or ironically, not interesting, part of actually playing Ace Combat 2. I listened to every briefing, which tends to only tell you about your objective in about 5 or so sentences. There's no cutscenes to speak of, and no plot-relevant chatter while on a mission. This will change in future games, of course, and to be clear, I'm not saying it's bad. I just want to make obvious that this game sounds like it has a ton of cool lore when you're reading about it, but then you actually play it and you're like, wait, that's it? Isn't this the origins of the legendary Phoenix? So if you're expecting cool origin story lore, don't. Interestingly, there's apparently a remake of this game for the 3DS, but to make matters even more confusing, it's named Assault Horizon Legacy Plus. Assault Horizon being a spin-off game for Windows, PS3, and 360. Why that game shares the name with the remake of Ace Combat 2 for the 3DS, I don't know. Maybe it's a weird marketing maneuver. While digging around, it would appear that a lot of lore for this game came from the 3DS remake. I'm gonna check it out at some point and find out for myself. Despite my name being PlayStation Paradise, I'm very curious to see how it compares to this game. Okay, so with that said, there's no real plot to discuss for Ace Combat 2. Just background info that you could fit on a napkin. You're Phoenix, a great pilot of the Usia Nation. You stop a coup, with the final level being the destruction of the rebels' headquarters. It looks a bit like the US Capitol building, but with 4 long bits rather than 2. And it's good, it's so short. There's also been a ton of changes to the gameplay, and I got a lot to say, so let's not waste no time. The improvements are noticeable before you're even flying. For example, the briefings are easy to understand, have more dialogue, and look a lot nicer. They were fine in the first game, but now they're just bigger, better, stronger. I also love how it lists the skill of every enemy pilot. You'll see some rookies and, okay, no big deal. Then an ace, and now you gotta be a bit more cautious during the mission. It's also super easy to tell where everything is in relation to each other thanks to the map in-map feature. You know what you're up against, where it is, and it's all in wonderful Technicolor. It's also much easier to see the difference between planes now. You have these nice, easy to read bars on the bottom left. The only confusing categories might be power and stability, and to be honest, I don't know what they're referring to. Maybe power is top speed and mobility is turning ability? That's my guess anyway. Anyway, you get this little plane taking off animation too. How cute is that? Once you're into a mission, you'll notice how great the game feels. Planes are much smoother and easier to control. There's all new animations for the missiles, locking on, the UI, it's all been improved. The information too is way more useful, and third person is actually playable now. Wowie. It kinda looks like a ridiculous amount of clutter, but it's all useful information. It kinda makes you feel like a badass. Yeah, sure, I don't really need to know my altitude, I can just easily see the ground, but what if I do? And my memory is a bit fuzzy, but I think Ace Combat 4's UI isn't that different from this game's. You'll also notice that they improved all the levels. They're much more varied this time around. You'll take out spy planes, enemy ships, and even help destroy a medieval castle at nighttime. The levels are more varied too. You have tropical islands, cityscapes, deserts, there's pretty much anything you can think of. Related to that and the gameplay is a new feature. Now you can actually fly above the clouds. It's a really cool mechanic even if the game doesn't use it all that often. As you do so, you'll enter a sorta new level almost. There's no loading times of course, but it's a little hard to explain, so it's up on screen right now. You only need to do it in a couple levels, but it's an awesome idea. The only issue is that the first time you gotta do it, your plane can stall really easily, and since you get no stall warning, expect to get a little frustrated. You can tell that the devs thought, we have all these awesome planes, okay, so what do we want to see them do? One word I would use is imaginative. One issue I have, and it's honestly one I still have with the series because it's always plagued it, is I never feel the skill ceiling. The games are always a bit too easy. There aren't enough close calls, and when there are, they feel frustrating more than anything. I'm not sure how you'd fix it though either, but I needed to bring it up. It almost feels like the Ace Combat games play themselves. You're never really in danger of failing, but when it does happen, I think it feels cheap. Like you accidentally flew too high and it autofills the mission, or you smack into a wall and it ping-pongs you into the ground and then you explode. Yeah, it is my fault for making the initial mistake, but it was one mistake. Rarely am I ever losing because I got beat in a dogfight. And I don't think you can just up the AI skill level because then I'd get frustrated. You know, thinking about this, I might actually have a solution. You know what this series needs? It needs the tutorial to include plain maneuvers, and these maneuvers need to not just be a fun, optional thing you can do. They need to be mandatory to win some dogfights. I played way too much War Thunder a couple months ago, and one thing that game taught me was how deep plane combat can be. I think Ace Combat is too simple. You never really need to account for pursuit angles or evasive maneuvering. You just line up behind an enemy plane and fire a missile, or you pull up and move randomly to avoid missiles. These work 90% of the time. I hope they make Ace Combat 8 more of a mix, keeping it as an action game, but also giving the combat more depth. Now maybe the online has a lot of that depth. I've never played the multiplayer, but I have beaten every Ace Combat on normal difficulty, and I think they're always cakewalks. Overall, the gameplay is fantastic. The only issue I have is with the lack of depth. For Ace Combat 2, I think it's perfectly fine, because this game is still leaps and bounds above Ace Combat 1. There's also 24 planes, which is a small but welcome bump up from Ace Combat 1's 16. There's also a bunch of aircraft you can't play, but I think that's okay. They don't want to give you something that you can barely complete a mission with. My only gripe is no bombers. There's not enough big emphasis on bombing missions either, so it's understandable. Maybe in Ace Combat 3. The soundtrack, like the graphics and gameplay, has undergone an evolution. Maybe a bit less so, but it's still great stuff. It's slowly morphing more and more into Ace Combat 4. The mission music is tense and memorable.
To gate our movements, we need you to take care of this dangerous situation. Target enemy E767 early vigilante plane unit.
And I love all the melodies. I also love the mission complete stinger that plays. It feels like you just leveled up in a JRPG. And all the little sound effects just everywhere in the game, they're all perfect. If Ace Combat 2 sounds wrong, then baby, I don't want to be right. Oh, and when you fly near planes, it goes whoosh. Graphically, just everything is better. It's almost a PS1 to PS2 jump. It's that good. I want to keep this short because I feel repetitive. Oh my god, this game is great, it's so much better. But also, it is. The one big gripe I have is still the story. Everything else, though, amazing, awesome, love it. The story, well, no story is a bad story in my opinion, and Ace Combat 2 basically doesn't have one, so yeah, there you go. Anyway, Ace Combat 2, it's fucking awesome, well worth adding to your PS1 collection. Thanks for watching, bye.